We're snorting cap rates and shooting up cash flow here at Deal Junkies.
All right, welcome back to Deal Junkies. We kicked Gabe out of the studio.
He's gone.
He doesn't know much about deals. So
we don't have the biggest junkie for the junkiest episodes. I don't get it.
But we're here with Jan again. We're going to talk about some deals. We're going to dive into ADU build or DADU build, seller finance mobile home park, and a triplex deal. We're going to talk about good deals and bad deals. Hopefully teach you guys some stuff. What do you want to start out with, that triplex you were talking about?
Let's start with the triplex. That was my third ever deal and probably my best residential deal based on like purchase price to current value. So
okay. So where'd you buy it at? What'd you buy it for?
Okay, so if you recall, like the reason I got the deal is because I was super clear on my criteria, right?
Yeah.
And so it met all my criteria, and I've got it because of a relationship. So someone posted another deal that was crazy good in Seattle as a wholesale on Wari on my Facebook group. And immediately, like, you know, you see it like 50 emails, right?
It was a real deal.
Yeah, it was a deal.
Yeah.
And someone like tied it up immediately. I missed it. But I knew, like, I was young and hungry, and I knew, like, okay, this guy knows how to find a good deal. So I just bugged him. I like hit him up and I was like, dude, Andy, like, how'd you find that? Let me buy you lunch. Like, let me, like, I'll promote you in the group. Like, what can I do to get to know you a little bit? He's like, all right, come and, like, check out my flips. And I got a chance to chat with him and hang out for a couple hours. And then I basically just called him every week and was like, hey, is your buyer still coming through on Seattle? Because I'll buy it. He's like, yeah, it's happening. And I just kept in touch every week. Literally every week I just checked in, quick check-in. And then 3 weeks later, he goes, hey, that Seattle deal's closing. I'm not calling about that, but I got this Tacoma triplex. Do you want to come take a look at it? So I drive down immediately. It's $200,000 for a 3,000 square foot triplex on the hill in Tacoma that has beautiful unobstructed views of Mount Rainier and the city and peekaboo water views from all three units. $200,000. I was like, this is great, man. And then I was still kind of scared though at that point of just real estate in general and just like making purchase decisions. So I try to wholesale it to my buddy Jesse Lee and make a $20K fee on it. And he's like, nah, that's hilltop, it's ghetto. I was like, dude, it's a triplex for like $225, like, or $220. Like, it's the deal. He's like, nah.
So the location specifically was the problem
for him. Yeah. But for me, I had already owned a house on the hill. And so, yeah, hilltop was ghetto back in the 90s, but it's got a lot better after UW Tacoma came down there. And so I was already more comfortable with it. So I was like, I'll buy it. I put in $70,000, so I'm into it for a $270,000. Got a hard money loan, and it appraised for $490,000 after. So I had like $220,000 of equity, and my hard money lender set up a holdback account, and so I was able to get refinance $70,000, and then 6 months later he goes, hey, dude, we have $30,000 check here for you. I was like, for what? He's like, oh, there was like an escrow holdback. I was like, really? So anyways, I pulled out $100,000. I put my mom on title, and she was able to, with her, you know, even though she has a low paying job, it was enough to like get a conventional loan for this house. So she moved into the top unit, and I filled the other two units with tenants. So the bottom and middle unit, they cover the mortgage completely. My mom lives there for free. I don't make anything. I make $50 a month. But now my mom has equity and free housing for life, and it cost me nothing, and I got $100,000 of tax-free cash out of it.
And you own part of it with your mom still.
I own 75%. She owns 25%.
So through your third deal ever, you paid for your mom's future retirement housing.
Yeah.
Like essentially her caring is now done, whether it's through that asset, or the savings you create.
Yep.
That's impressive.
You said you put $70,000 on the front end into this?
Yeah, on the rehab.
Okay, so they did 100% finance of the property. You paid for 100% of the rehab, or what did that loan structure look like?
Gosh, I can't remember exactly, but it was I think I put down 10% on the total deal, and they kept my down payment. I can't remember. I'll have to ask the lender exactly what that looked like, but basically, I was able to get the deal done, refinance, pull out all of my cash, and then some later.
Yeah.
So yeah, down payment reserve, I think, is what it was called. And so they were holding my down payment instead of like me putting money into the deal. They were just holding my down payment.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it was 100% financing.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then you used, well, not quite 100, right? Because after the fact, 100, or on the front end, 100. You 100% financing plus 70 grand into the rehab that you paid. But
Yeah.
you didn't have 70 grand at that time. Where
Correct.
You find the
They
70
gave
grand.
me financing on the rehab too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
It sounds
purchased
like
it
what
right
they did is they essentially put your down payment, your skin in the game, into an impound account because you had such a huge spread there that
Yeah.
that deal was way better than any other deal. And sometimes hard money lenders will do that, where they'll structure it as a normal 90% loan, but they'll do it back in 100%.
So why didn't the guy that sold it to you buy that one if he was a flipper and he does these deals?
He said, "Hey, I have 3 active flips going in Tacoma. My wife won't let me buy this."
Yeah.
I was like, "All right, I'll take it."
Yeah.
And you almost tried to wholesale it still.
I did, yeah. Because I was like, man, I could use the cash, but then I was like, I'll make it work. I'm glad my friend told me no. He says like that's one of the biggest regrets of his career was
Passing on that
passing on that. Because yeah, now I continue to pull money out of that thing. 2 times more I refinanced it and pull it out another 50 and 70, and it still breaks even or cash flows $100-200 a month for me. Mom's still happy living there. My mom comes up to me like when I haven't seen her in a while. She's like, "Yashu, I have $140,000 saved up. This is amazing. Thank you for saving me rent. This is great."
What did she call you? Yash?
Yashu.
Yashu?
Yeah, it's kind of like Johnny in Polish.
Okay.
Yeah.
one. Okay.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty
Oh, man.
crazy.
Do you think you could repeat that deal today in today's market there?
Oh man, you can't even. Now you can't get a single family home for 200 grand anymore.
Not, I mean, at scale, have rents increased and everything? Like, can you make a deal and you can go burr a deal like that still?
If you did crazy heavy value add on a bigger project, yeah, you could match those kind of numbers, maybe. But that was a light value add, you know. It was just like such a cheap triplex that even a light value add. That's actually my oldest building. It was built in 1889, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
And from an macroeconomic standpoint, it's the land value. You bought it at a period of time before the land value exploded. And so it sounds like you have a pretty shitty structure. It's a big 1880 structure. That's a problem, on a lot of them, that's problematic, not a good thing.
Well, luckily that one was, so that's why it's important to look. The first thing I do when I'm underwriting a residential property is look at not just the listing details, that's fine start, but the county assessor records, because then you can see a little box that says effective year built.
Yeah.
And I saw effective year built was 1990. And so they they stabilized the foundation, they cut in new window wells. That thing is solid. It's one of my better buildings. Even though it's so old, they did so much work in 1990 that from an economic life perspective, the structure was basically rebuilt just 30 years ago, which is fine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super unique. And you bought that for less than $100 a foot.
Yeah. About $70 a foot.
That's insane.
Yeah. So probably my best residential deal. And it's just so cool that I was able to, take care of mom's housing for life because, she took care of 3 boys growing up. She was never able to, no one had told her buy a house, start building equity. She was just trying to scrape by. I mean, she moved us close to the King County Aquatic Center because she was working 2 or 3 jobs and didn't have time to drive us to practice. And she knew we would freaking die on the streets if we didn't have some kind of sport to do. So she moved us right next to the pool and we were all competitive swimmers. But, she didn't single mom, new country, 3 boys. They're all huge, right? We all wanted
Eating
to
crazy amounts of food.
Yeah. Competitive swimming, getting into trouble as teenagers. And so she was doing the best she could. So one of the first things I thought of when I found some success is how do I give back? I mean, it's the least I could do,
Mhm.
It's the least I could do.
Right on. Let's dive into the mobile home park too. So that was 51 units you said. Where'd you buy that? What'd that look like?
Yeah, pretty standard for my mobile home park acquisitions. It was just cool because, we did a cold call. We did the price price anchor, discovery call, and these people are just kind of ready to throw in the towel. And that's almost every time we just buy someone that's ready to retire. So the only way you can get lucky is by putting out a lot of reps of like these calls, because then eventually you're just going to call someone at the time that they want to retire. Right. And so that was the case with this one. We built our own luck there, and it wasn't too hard of a negotiation or anything. We just kind of like, hey, we can pay like, 1.2 cash or 1.55 seller finance. They went for the seller financed option. We went and inspected the parks. Turns out they were pretty okay. We just needed to reallocate some of the money to one park and take some from the other. Close the seller financing, 20% down, 3.5% interest rate, 10-year term, 30-year amortization. Pretty much my standard terms on any park, any seller finance deal I do are around there. And we closed on, that one in 2021. 4 months after closing, why it's significant is we got an offer for 2.55, so instant $1 million in equity gain. Obviously, I kept it because I'm just trying to build passive income, and love that park. I just today looked at a rent reconciliation, and it's performing well. And
Where'd you buy that one at?
that one is north of Spokane.
Okay, is
Yeah.
that the Moses Lake?
No, that is Colville and Kettle Falls.
How many people live in that area?
It's a smaller one. I would say there's like, I think it's technically part of the Spokane MSA, but it's like an hour and a half, so no one really drives that far. Why MSAs are significant is because you want to see like how far the nearest economic center is that people might be willing to commute to, which in my experience, people don't really commute past like 40 minutes most times. And so if it's an hour and a half away, it's kind of insignificant. But in Washington, we are willing to bend our criteria a little bit since we have so many connections in this market, in this state, right? So
is this a town of like 10,000 people?
yeah, it's like 20 or 30,000 people in the
Okay.
towns. And Spokane MSA is big. It's like million plus, but again, we're not really in
You're
that.
outside of it.
Now, when I need to do big CapEx, I will hit up people from Spokane and say, hey, I got a big project. I'm bidding out, yes, it's an hour and a half drive, but like, so it's still relevant. It's just not like my tenants don't work in Spokane.
Yeah,
right?
gotcha.
So, yeah.
So you bought this thing for 1.5. What did the rent roll look like when you bought it?
Oh, when we bought it, it was bringing in maybe 17 grand, 18 grand a month. And now we've got it up to a few years later, just steady rent increases and billing back water. We're bringing in about 30 grand a month. So about
Oh, wow.
doubled the revenue.
So what does the cash flow position look like with your 20% down and 3.5% at acquisition on something like that?
At acquisition, it wasn't big, but it was still cash flowing across those 51 units about $3 grand a month, which was great.
Yeah.
I honestly think I need to change something in my underwriting because I'm always worried before I close some of these things in terms of like OpEx and revenue. And I'm like, man, I don't know if it's going to cash flow enough. And then I'm always pleasantly surprised with the cash flow. So maybe I just need to adjust something. Maybe I'll have you guys look at my pro forma. But yeah, it was $3 grand at closing. And now that thing pumps out on a bad month, like 8, and on a good month, like 11 grand net after everything. So pretty amazing cash flow considering, I raised $360K to get it closed. The fact that we're making, let's say 10 grand a month.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
I mean, you
30%
started at
30%.
10%.
30% a year.
Yeah, you started at like a 10% cash on cash almost
Yeah.
on day one of
Yeah.
acquisition.
Yeah.
With room to run.
Everything I've ever bought cash flow day one in terms of mobile home parks. But now that I have my bearings about me and I understand the basics of this asset class, I am willing to buy something that wouldn't cash flow day one. But I will say it's a lot easier if you're just getting started to buy something that is going to cash flow day one because there's a lot of security and emotional well-being and knowing, okay, worst comes to worst, I'm still going to make a few bucks this month. you
Yeah.
know?
So you brought 360 grand down. Where'd you find 360 grand at to buy the deal?
A couple of folks that I met in Wari. Yeah, I sat down for lunch with them and showed them my deal and showed them my projected returns, and they were satisfied with that and said, okay. Well, so they split it between them, 180 each.
Oh, just 2 people brought in, and then
Yeah,
you
a
split
couple
it,
and
the
another
deal in
friend.
thirds, or how much of the deal can you take at that point?
So on that specific deal, my capital partners both own 16% equity for their 160K investment, 180K investment, and so 32% to my passive partners, and the operating team, which is myself and my other partner, we own the remainder. So on that deal, I personally own 45% equity, and that's about my average across my portfolios. I own about 44% of every deal on average, and we also have like a 47% LTV, so like quite a bit of equity there.
Yeah. So on something like that, because they're owning such small percentages but bringing all the money, are you structuring a way where they get their money out first, or how do they get a return that makes sense for them, or is it just the equity growth that makes sense on it?
Both equity growth and cash flow. No, they don't get paid first. There's no pref. I haven't done. For better or worse, my operating agreements have been very simple. Hey, you get this percentage of equity for your investment, and every time we make $100 of cash flow, you get $16,
Mm-hmm.
and I get 45.
And if you're
doing
getting a
all the work.
10% cash on cash return, they're both essentially getting a 3% yield at time of investment, and then they're just banking on you increasing that yield to make their investment better.
That's it.
Well, they're getting higher than that in yield because you got some loan pay down in there too, and then depreciation. But
Overall yield, yeah. But
Yeah.
but that's
on the cash on
that's
cash.
net worth.
And a cool thing about mobile home parks is that many people don't know is it's one of the most tax advantaged asset classes. So when we bought that park for $1.55 million, that year we took about a $800,000 taxable loss. Year one.
How does I would think it would be less because there's less stuff you own and land value isn't depreciable. So like how does it
Well,
work?
remember my parks are in secondary and tertiary markets, and so land out there in Colville and Kettle Falls
Oh, it's
is
worth nothing.
very cheap.
Yeah.
So the land value we were able to only apply a couple $100,000 to land, which you can't depreciate land; it doesn't break, right? But with mobile home parks, you apply all of the value to the specialized systems, which are mostly 15-year assets. So like,
Oh, so you have even faster depreciation.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
so hold on, I'm not done yet. So it's like, so you have roads, we have septic tanks at one of the parks, you have underground utilities, right? And so you apply all the value to that. And normally you depreciate those things over a 15-year schedule. However, with mobile home parks, there's something called bonus depreciation, where you take all that 15 years of depreciation and pull it forward to year one and take it all immediately in year one. It's called bonus depreciation, right? So we were able to take about an $800,000 taxable loss. So for my partners that invested $180K, they got an $180,000 or so taxable loss year one too. So now they can offset, if they have any passive income, they can offset it with these passive losses.
Over the next few years, you're offsetting on that park to them, or are they real estate professionals and offsetting?
They are not real estate professionals, so for them, they're going to have to wait until they sell a primary home, and they can use it to offset their primary home gain. And
well,
for
all
me,
their cash flow, right? They can offset.
Of course,
future cash flow.
they can offset future cash flow. These losses do not expire, so you get to hold on to them and use them whenever you're going to use them. But for a real estate professional, as you mentioned, Trevor, you can use them against your active income. So I haven't paid federal income tax really for about 3 years, which I'm proud of because I don't necessarily agree with exactly how our government allocates capital. I think it's pretty inefficient. And also it's like 41 cents out of every dollar is going to build nuclear missiles, and we already have the most. And I'm just like, do we need that many, right? So
Yeah, state taxes are way more relevant to our actual lives than federal.
exactly.
Yeah.
So with that bonus depreciation, is that specific to mobile home parks you're talking about, or is that just real estate bonus depreciation and accelerated depreciation that you're taking advantage of?
It's mobile home parks just happen to have a lot of value that you can allocate towards kind of these specialized systems that you can
And do
bonus
15
depreciate
years
all of
rather
that.
than
It's their
27.
components. They don't have any long-lived items.
Well,
Right.
because like with multifamily, and residential, we're looking at 27 and a half years. Commercial, you look at 39 years.
Right.
Now you get
But-
to accelerate to 15, but with normal, we can bonus depreciate
Yeah,
apartments.
you
can't we, all
correct.
day
But the
year one?
problem is you don't have as many. You have all the categories you want. Every component is in that from on a global schedule. It's in the manual in the MHP park. Where in the multifamily, you're not going to get all of that. So because of the components and their lifeline
I
of the
see.
components. In depreciation, I have a love-hate relationship with bonus depreciation because people take it and they buy deals based on bonus depreciation. The reality is it's an actual fucking cost.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta pay it back.
You gotta
Yeah.
pay it
Well,
back.
maybe.
Well, and think of it
Mostly.
of the life of the loan. So for a mobile home park, say you've got a septic system in there, right? Well, the value of that value of that septic system is a depreciated right? Because it's been in use. It's no longer as valuable as it was. But from a write-off standpoint, it's based on your purchase price and what the land value is.
Mhm.
And so you're actually, I've never really looked at it, but you have this kind of dollar for dollar component where you can actually get a better value for what it is you're actually going to depreciate. And so there's benefits to having that cash and use it for tax purposes, but you also, the double-edged end of that sword is you got to realize is that your physical deterioration is happening. And if you use all of that money now in year one and you don't plan accordingly for that physical deterioration inside of your business model, you can get screwed by using the one edge of the sword and forgetting about the other edge.
Sure. Yeah, there's trade-offs to everything. I just figure I'm in acquisition mode, and so for us it makes sense if we do plan on buying at least one big park every year, which we have been, then we continue to rack up those depreciable losses. Yep. And for me, $1 today is better than $1 in 5 years. And so
because you're being smart about it.
That's why we've chosen to do it that way.
And but you can take future write-offs and then pay past problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why did the sellers want to do this deal? They get to make about the same amount of money. They don't have to manage the deal. Plus they got 20% of it up front. Like, what was their motivation? Why'd they like selling it this way?
They were ready to just stop with the headaches. I mean, a lot of folks I bought from, they're ready to throw in the towel, even though someone else is managing it. And we even took over. This is one of my favorite park managers. We have 5 managers on staff. He's one of my, favorite ones. He's in there. He's working hard. But even so, they still, you still got to do bookkeeping. You still got to deal with insurance. You still got to make sure escrow's set up and paid. You still got to make decisions. And so the gentleman that we bought it from was a successful business person, wanted to focus on his successful businesses and let go of this that seemed like a headache to him. And one person's headache is, another person's treasure chest. And so we've added value to it. We sub-metered utilities, 51 sub-meters, and now we're able to charge an extra, $3,000 a month in utility bill back, which is great. We're bringing in units, we've cut down trees, we've protected homes from damage, and it's for us, it's exactly what we wanted. We're young and hungry, and we want headaches because that's how you make money, by solving problems. And
you breathe life into an asset he wasn't going to.
That's it.
And why'd he want to sell it on terms rather than cash?
Before that question, can you contrast the difference between the cash offer and the seller finance offer? And I think it kind of gets to his answer, which is, so you had about a 20% delta.
Generally at that point, interest rates were still low, right? And so our cash offer was closer to our seller financed offer. But a lot of these folks are motivated by not paying taxes. And so when I give you 20% down or $360,000 down on the deal, that is what you're going to pay capital gains tax on. And now when I make a monthly payment to you, you're slowly going to pay back capital gains tax. But again, $1 today is better than $1 tomorrow. And a lot of these folks, they don't need that much cash. This person is cash heavy. The only reason he probably asked for 20% is because he didn't fully trust me to do 5% down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm specifically asking is the difference in the price between the cash offer versus the seller finance offer. So like a 20% delta, you can go get hard money at a cheaper delta than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, understand. I think I understand the question. How we formulate our cash price versus our seller finance price is just solving for a similar stabilized cash on cash return based on, the one debt structure or another. So if we're asking the seller for 3.5%, but we know the bank can give us 5%, to get to a similar 20% stabilized cash on cash, we just reduce the cash offer until that box reads 20%, and so it was something like 1.2 and 1.55.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think the component of that is the equity requirement, right? So you probably need more equity at the bank level, even though interest rates were low. And that's affecting your cash on cash return.
That's a part of it. And also the banks on these deals that are kind of sub-institutional quality, which means, not that A-class park with 100 units, right, on the I-5 corridor. It's sub-institutional, so less than that. And they're going to want a 20 or 25-year amortization period instead of 30. With the seller, I can get 30, right? So my monthly payment's lower. The bank's only going to give me 5 years, typically, for, again, sub-institutional quality. I know, the bigger assets, you can get Fannie Freddie debt, and it's just like, looks just like if you're buying a, big apartment building. But for this little bit riskier asset, the bank's not giving me great terms all around. So,
and I love that. I really appreciate you unpacking that, because I think a lot of people assume that you just increase your price because that then gets the seller willing to then sell you the property because it's a gross price scenario. But what I'm hearing is you are actually just changing your prices based on your own internal metrics, trying to create the offer that works for you.
Yeah.
And I think when people, and that's what I do, same thing as I'm looking at both offers, they're getting down to the same bottom metric.
Right.
Like I just gave out 2 seller finance offers today. They were very similar with some differences, but all it did was drove down to the same final component that I'm trying to get to. So the price wasn't trying to convince them of anything. I'm okay with whichever price they choose, but it still does speak to the seller. And so you're actually creating an offer scenario, a contrast that either one will work for you, but it then gives you a whole different pitch, a whole different story, and something different to sell with the seller. Does that value to you in the negotiation standpoint? Does that create value for you in the negotiation side?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, people feel empowered when they have options, so that's nice. And generally, like you said, Mike, I know what my desired profit metrics are. But I will say I'll even take a slightly less attractive return on a seller finance offer because there's less brain damage incurred, and there's less risk that the bank blows up my deal. The seller's not going to blow up a deal once they agree to it on terms. I've never had it happen.
Yep.
But a bank can tell you terms and then at the end change something up on you. And so I am willing to, but yeah, generally I'm just looking for a similar profit metric, whether it's IRR or stabilized cash on cash or equity multiple or just my $500,000 minimum per deal. Like as long as I'm hitting those for the most part, yeah, that's how I'm coming up with my numbers. And unfortunately now we're often only able to offer seller financing because we don't want to offend the seller.
Yep.
Like we don't want to offend people for fun. If they tell us they want $3 million and the only way I can get close to that was with seller financing, and now my cash offer with 7% interest is looking like 1.5, I don't want to.
Yeah,
they're going to laugh me out of the building, right? And so often now we'll just say, hey, we heard your 3. Here's one for 2.8 seller finance at these terms. Sorry, we don't have a cash offer for you. We didn't want to offend you or put something in front of you that was so far away. And if they ask us, well, what was it? We'll tell them. And, but we're not going to put ourselves in that position on purpose. Yep. We're not trying to piss people off because.
And if you can verbally have that conversation, it actually makes it so you are a more powerful borrower to them because you're just like, hey, you understand their goals. You understand borrowing. You understand assets. I can cash you out, but here's the reality of what that looks like. And it doesn't have to be on paper at all. And when you can say, well, if I had to cash you out based on where banks and rates are at and their LTV, like 1.7, I didn't put a whole lot of effort into that because I knew that didn't meet your goals. Yeah. And so we settled on this format because you told me this was important to you.
Right. Yeah. That's great.
Was the park you closed 2 months ago seller finance also?
Yep.
What rate did you do on that?
That one is 3.6, 40-year amortization, $750K on the price, and assumable debt. It's actually an 8-year term with a 2-year option, our option to extend.
So I ask you because on that one it sounds like it wouldn't matter because you assumed a seller finance debt or a bank loan debt.
No,
or you made your debt assumable to someone else.
Yes.
Okay, so then it does apply. So the minimum legal, what's it called? Interest rate? There's another name for it.
Computed.
Imputed interest
Imputed
rate. Do you ever run into issues with that talking to sellers?
What is it, 1.6?
No.
Now it's up to 4 or something.
What?
Yeah, so it changes day over day, and there's a short-term, long-term, middle term. When rates were 3%, right, it was like
it was
1
under
or
1.
0.
Yeah.
Now, when rates are 7, it's like 4, 4.5.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So it never became an issue when we were in that low yield
Right.
environment. But
Never.
now, for this period of time,
Yeah.
we're in a high yield environment. It could be an issue.
Got it.
So it sounds like no one ever asked you about it then, really. Okay.
I've
Well-
had it come up once after the fact.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you do about
Yeah.
it?
What?
We didn't have to do anything about it. The CPA just figured it all out, and but it came onto our radar like, hey, there's no imputed interest, and in this scenario, the seller specifically wanted a 0% interest rate. Like they wanted that because of their biblical principles.
Oh. Okay.
And so then they just ate it because the CPA required them to.
Okay.
My understanding, talking to one CPA, was if the deal only works this specific way, then you can kind of throw it out the window.
Hmm.
But that's kind of an arbitrary thing, I feel
The
like.
tax code is interpreted, and CPAs interpret them different ways.
Yeah. We've run into that quite a bit, actually, where people ask about it.
Mhm.
So it's kind of
I
interesting.
mean, I think I would have pretty good proof if that did come up, which thanks for making me aware. But if it ever did come up, I think I would have a good paper trail showing, look, I wanted to offer 600 grand cash on that deal. And in order to get to the 750, like these are the terms that had to be there.
Well, it also doesn't matter to you as a buyer.
Yeah, it's not
only-
your issue. It's the seller's issue because it's their tax return.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so to you, it has no effect. Doesn't matter what.
Oh, I thought it was just intended to protect people from getting too low of a rate.
That's the intent.
No, I thought it was
it's-
so
it's
you
the
don't-
opposite.
It's so you don't collect all principal payments and avoid paying tax on interest.
Really?
From the IRS's eyes, they
Oh,
want
okay.
you to be charging real rates because if you're not charging real rates and you do a 0% interest,
not paying
loan-
They
tax.
collect less tax.
exactly.
They don't
Yeah.
care
Yeah.
about
No.
They don't care about you.
No.
They care about them.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, that's a super cool deal. Then I love that.
Yeah.
So those are both sweet deals you did. We wanted to talk about a rougher deal too. So that's where we learned the most lessons.
Sure. Okay. Look, it was. Let me set the stage here. It was like end of 2021, early 2022. This is the time when like houses in Seattle are selling for $500,000 over asking, like daily, right? Like it was obscene. There was a house that sold 1.3 million over asking in Bellevue. Over asking.
What was that listed for?
2 million. It sold for like 3.3.
Jesus.
Right? It was complete mania. Everyone just thought they were going to be mega rich forever, right? 14 trillion was printed, right? There was money everywhere, and so people were spending. And this deal came across my desk from one of my masterclass members. He's like, hey, man, this guy, I know he's selling a house. Are you interested in looking at it? I'm like, yeah, of course. So I look at it. It's a double lot. So it's single family zoning. Minimum lot size is 5,000, but the lot is 11,000. So instantly I'm like, oh, yes, it's 835 grand, but it's really like 410 grand for each of these lots, which is a great deal. So I put together my package and I was just going to wholesale it. And then the first person I showed it to, he's a big developer in Seattle, my friend Jimmy Tang, and he goes, yeah, I'll take it. And I'm like, shit.
Jimmy wants it.
It
must
must
be a
be
good
so good that I can't let it go. I need to build it, right?
So there's no houses, no structure.
There's a house. There is a crappy old single family home there, and it's just a big lot that I'm like,
Okay.
I want to develop this. Because so in Seattle, on a single family lot, now you can do a single family home plus an attached ADU, attached with a breezeway. It looks really goofy, but it's attached with a breezeway, and then it's kind of its own separate 3-story structure. And then after that, you can do a DADU. So you can do 3 houses on each single family home. So I'm like, okay, I'll permit this as a 6-unit. So I buy it with hard money. I'm like, this will be easy. But it was my first development site permitting on my own. I've always done others with partners that were big developers, right? And so I start permitting it, subdivision, full subdivision, short plat, as opposed to like a quick condo lot subdivision. So that took forever. Everyone's backed up because everyone's making money, right? So I just couldn't find the right people. And it just dragged on, and I wasn't on top of it as much as I should have because I always had partners and they kind of helped, And so that one took 24 months to get the permits, and it was hard money the whole time. I ended up, not the whole time, I ended up having to refinance into a conventional loan. So just holding costs for like 160 grand or something crazy, right? For an expensive house. And my neighbors, the site had so many problems I should have never bought it. It was fine for an experienced developer. I'm not a super experienced developer. I built 4 or 5 houses, none on a site like this. The access was through a neighbor's driveway.
So you had to go buy an easement.
So I got an easement for free. They said, hey, we like you. We know what you're doing. I said, look, I'm going to make your driveway way better than before. They said, no problem. Bring the paperwork or sign it next time. I come over 2 weeks later. They hate me for some reason. All the neighbors talked and they decided Jan is the devil. We hate Jan. They said, what's your attorney's contact? We're suing you. I was like, I'm not telling you that. Just sue me. If you're going to do it, just do it. They started blocking my ability to get into my house with their vans. They would back up into my driveway. And it was just very stressful because, neighbors are difficult, right? I cut down 2 trees on my site. They immediately told the city. Turns out I was well within my rights to do that, but it's still just like all these headaches, right? Constantly people on my site. And so I was just so emotionally drained and just so much brain damage on that site. It was huge trees everywhere, steep slope in areas, like just a bad site. No utility access, no road access. Couldn't have picked a worse site. When I was finished permitting, I sold it on Wari to a really great guy that's building it now, but I ended up making nothing. I maybe, if you count the fact that I lived in the house for 18 months, I probably made 20 grand, but I kind of just broke even, I had $500,000 tied up in the deal. So I got my $500,000 back in cash, and that was happy.
That $500,000 of your own money or investor money?
Of just my money. Yeah.
Okay.
So what were your opportunity costs on that $500,000?
Right. Huge. I could have bought,
How many parks?
2 great ones or 1 huge one. Right. And I didn't because I was just stuck and I was stressed, and it's not just money. It's also your emotional state. And so if you have a lot of stress happening with a specific project because you don't know what you're doing or because it was far more complex than I had done before and that I should have taken on, it's good to make incremental changes in terms of the risk profile of the asset you're acquiring. And I just said, oh, a successful developer wants it. It must be good. And so I made a decision.
The skill set of him.
Yeah, without having his skill set and without weighing all of the risks. And those risks turns out to be so arduous that it took forever to get permits. It should have taken 12 months. It took me 24. And that's what ate up a lot of my profit. And I ended up being so stressed at the end of it that I just didn't want to build it. He's now building it, and it sucks. I thought, you could build this whole thing all at once. He's having to build only 4 out of the 6 houses I permitted and designed because the neighbors are being jackasses, not letting his guys through. And so now he's forced to, where he could be using some of this like open just driveways to like stage and put materials just on the side, not even blocking the road, just in some bushes. They're just being so difficult that he's now having to not build 2 houses just to be able to stage materials and bring trucks in. And so like it's becoming difficult.
They're just causing a inconvenience for themselves because now it's going to take longer to do all those.
It is going to take
But
longer.
that's not how neighbors think.
No.
So how'd you end up? You ended up getting an easement from them, or how'd you?
No, we just ended up having to do directional boring down a steep slope to connect to utility lines on another street.
Yeah.
And so he's going to have to build that, and
Eventually
it's going to suck.
Is the deal still going to pencil for him? Like it makes sense to do?
I hope he makes a lot of money on it. The way I penciled it out, it was going to make $700,000 of profit all said and done, which is fine. We generally want to make $100K a unit if you're going to do development in Seattle. 150 is better, but yeah, it was gonna make over 100K a pop, and so I hope he makes that. But I can't say, and
because the timeline's now extended.
Yeah,
that's the cost of it.
That's part of it, and yeah.
Okay, so if you were to do that again, would you have tried to partner with the main developer guy, or just wholesaled it to him? Great
question. I think I'd love to do more partnerships with people that are more experienced than me, where I've gotten. Some of my partnerships I started with people that had almost nothing, and that can be a little bit difficult because people that don't have much make short-term decisions. People that have more than you are going to make long-term decisions typically, or at the same level as you. So something I learned is just about partnership. It's good to get into partnership with someone that's at a generally similar level as you or above you, because they're going to make better decisions. They're not strapped, right? So in that case, looking back, I would have loved to partner with him and just even taken a 10K fee just to like pay for more marketing, and then put my 40K into the deal, and also just got to learn the stresses of that site, and if I want to take those on my own. So
Okay. So your overall loss, you said what'd you buy this thing for?
bought it for $835. And
you used hard money for part of it.
I used hard money for most of it. And I've spent probably my total cash into the deal was about $500K. So needed, 170 down, and then 330 in holding costs and entitlements, architecture, survey, dirt work, etc. Probably was half of that. So about 150K or 170K to permit it, 170K to hold it. Ended up selling it for 1175 and basically just broke even.
Yeah.
Painful.
Way to not lose your ass on a site like that, though.
Yeah.
Like the things you look out for: poor utility access, poor vehicle access, slopes, trees
everywhere, slope,
Yeah.
steep slope.
Things
Oh my
like that.
God.
Were you ever really nervous while you're in that deal and it's going poorly and you have these hard money costs and you're paying this monthly float?
Yeah, I basically like accepted in my head, like, I think I might lose $200,000 to $300,000 here. And so when it sold for 1175, because the first time I floated it out there, kind of soft, like, hey, I don't have permits yet, but like, anyone want to buy this for like 1-1? Crickets.
Yeah.
Crickets.
Yeah.
And what time was that when you?
That was maybe 8 months before I actually finally got the permits, where I was like, hey, I'm almost there, but
So was
I
that
didn't.
in 23?
Yeah, 23, and then I ended up selling it just maybe 4 months ago. 5
Yeah,
months ago.
sentiment changed. It's amazing how much builder sentiment drives markets.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Because builder sentiment drives land value, and land value drives prices overall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love how you said incremental change. I made the exact same mistake.
Yeah, you don't want to take on a whole new animal. It's nice to just take on an animal that is slightly bigger than your last kill. You know?
So I
like that.
you said you had built 5 houses prior to that too?
Yeah, but it was all kind of with partners, right? I had managed a couple development sites for someone else.
So are they tasking you like, hey, they're kind of running it. They're like, hey, go figure this out.
Yeah,
Back to me. type of
correct.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you knew the general process, but maybe not all the details.
Correct.
Timeline.
I knew enough to be dangerous, so that's
Yeah.
why I got myself into
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah, I remember when I just split a lot once, and so like developed it, and it
Yeah.
took like 14 months to like just
split it.
So like I'm just winging it. I'm just figuring it out
Sure.
as I go. So I
Yeah,
imagine
you also had a
like
nice
that.
underlying asset there.
Yeah, like we
You
bought
did.
4plex with a lot, and so it was
Cool.
really-
That's
split
nice.
it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, mine was just a house that I was bleeding on.
Yeah.
I mean, I moved into, there's black mold in it, and I was,
You moved into it
oh
to
yeah,
take it
and I house hacked it, but I was still losing money
just so
every
you
month.
could get better debt.
Yeah.
So did you move into it because you were worried about losing money?
No, I moved into it because I was just like, I don't want to have another mortgage. Like, what if I can just offset this one by living here?
Yeah.
Right. And reduce my monthly cost. And also, I rented the basement to a friend that ended up growing weed there, and we're no longer friends. Like, who does that?
A guy who's desperate.
Yeah, a girl.
Yeah, a person who's desperate.
And then
Yeah.
are the neighbors like confronting you all the time as you're living in this house and doing all this stuff?
Yeah, they were just very difficult. Anytime I tried to, be cordial and have a conversation, they're like, don't step on our property, don't do this, don't do that, blocking my access. It was just it's just not ideal. So,
Dude, your worst deal is you only lost 20 grand.
oh, I made
That's not-
20 grand.
Or you
yeah.
made 20 grand.
When you, so in the last episode, you mentioned a period of time where you kind of had some depression and you made some changes in your business model. Was this part of that?
This was part of that. Yeah, I think I was just, I struggled with drug addiction and for most of my life, 15 years, and then I got clean and sober, and then honestly part of the stress of this site and then just some other things that were weighing on me made me relapse after 2 years of being clean and sober. And I had kind of a 6-month period where I was just like not well mentally. And this is kind of like part of the reason why the site slipped. Like it was already going not great. And then, I went to South America and just partied and like kind of lost more time and more emotional wellness. And obviously that didn't help anything. That made the site go even slower. Right. And so now luckily back to kind of, it's been in almost a year now again since that time, since I've been clean and sober again, which is nice, but it's like definitely affected the business, right? So yeah, you just make better decisions when you don't have too many external stimuli acting on your brain, right?
So that was after we met in Maui then that you went and did that.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Mhm.
yeah, I remember you sharing the story there.
Yeah.
I think I
Probably.
met you right before this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. Well, that's a sweet story. Mike, do you have more questions? Or
No,
You
I,
wanna
have,
talk more
I
deals?
don't have much more time. Nah, I love the way you tact it. Like, you're a pattern recognizer, aren't you?
Try to be.
Yeah. Yeah, you look at things.
I love the
as
use
a
of the
machine.
VAs. It's like, dude, I want to set up exactly what you're doing and start doing it.
Good, man. I'm happy to help.
We're already talking about there. We got changes to make.
Sweet. Well, if people want to connect with you, like you share all this information, you have classes, you have courses, tell them again where they can find all
Sure, yeah. Find me on Facebook. That's easiest. Wari, Jan Wanat is my name. Find me on Facebook. You can reach out on Instagram if you'd like as well. Grow with Jan. Otherwise, yeah, we have a few like educational offerings. Cody, Christian, and I teach you how to buy, sell, or finance mobile home parks off market. That's called mhparkacademy.com. That's a course, video courses, plus you get a weekly call with one of us, which is cool. Those guys are very sharp. They own a couple hundred units. And I also have a masterclass I do on how do you start building a portfolio of cash flow. I do that in Seattle twice a year in person. And finally, I have a mastermind for the first time this year. That's in a few weeks. Trevor's not coming, but Dane is. He recommended for him to come, so that's exciting.
Oh.
And that's the best way to reach me and some of the offerings.
Sweet. Well, connect with Jan and Gabe. Shout out to you, our biggest fan. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks,
Yes.
guys.